Hello everyone, welcome back. Last time I was talking about the tragedy of the loss of my best friend Steve in a climbing accident, and my whole world kind of changed at that moment. I had been thinking up these plans to move to Colorado with him and pursue this whole climbing thing. I finally had set in my heart that I was going to do this for real, finally. And Steve and I had been out here the year before on a ski trip checking it out, and we kind of had a plan together, and now he was gone. And I didn't want to be in Minnesota anymore. I just felt this desire to escape everything and everyone and just go anywhere. And I happened to already have plans set up out here. There was a lady from my church that had a connection out here for me to work on a construction crew. So ended up packing my truck back up and moved out to Larkspur, Colorado, and started working at this little horse ranch. They were building a horse ranch, and I just started working on the construction crew and started applying some of the skills I'd learned in Honduras, doing framing, and lived down there at this guy's house, but I was kind of all by myself, and it was a weird and lonely experience. Over the course of the next couple of months, as I was working there, I started getting phone calls from the investigative researchers that had been investigating the climbing accident. There were some kind of professionals that knew about the construction of ropes and had brought the rope that had broken to their laboratory along with the gree-gree, and then tested those two things along with several other ropes and gree-grees of the same brand, trying to simulate the accident, both with materials that could be found on site and with other foreign materials like metal and rocks and sharp objects, trying to simulate the accident that had happened. And he explained that they weren't able to even really come close to simulating what had happened. The gist of it was that I took away from it was that it was almost something of a miracle that what had happened was able to happen, because a gree-gree, when loaded like that, should never be able to cut a rope, despite what you might put in it. I mean, they're made for caving and for all sorts of applications where debris and junk can get caught in there, but it'll spit it back out. So, and then he was explaining the construction of the ropes. They're threaded different ways, each of the strands. So you got the Z threads and the S threads, and they're twisted in different orientations, so that even if you do cut it in one orientation, then the ropes that are twisted in the other way shouldn't be able to cut. Apparently they tested it fairly rigorously, and were never able to come up with a conclusion as to why this happened. Anyway, I was in no mood to try out climbing again at this point. I felt like the climbing season was over for me. I had no idea what I was even doing there or what to plan for. Over about 2 months is all I lasted with this construction crew. These guys were real jerks to work with, and I was starting to realize how much I hated working on a crew, and I wasn't sure what I was going to do with my life. Well, wouldn't you know it, there happened to be another guy that had moved out to Colorado at the same time. Another good buddy of mine, Matt, had moved up to Littleton, and he was in kind of a similar situation as me. He had moved out by himself. He had a random connection in Littleton too, but he was looking to get out of his living situation. And he and I had been really good friends in high school, and he ended up sort of taking Steve's place, I guess, in a sense, which was a tremendous blessing for me at the time to have a buddy out there. And I didn't know that he was out there. I can't even remember how I discovered that he was out there, but we ended up hooking up one day and started going up to the mountains, and he was really into snowboarding, which was fine. I wasn't interested in getting back into climbing. So he and I put together the plan of going up to, there was a job fair up at Keystone ski resort, and we figured we'd go see if we could maybe land a job at the job fair. So we headed up there and both landed jobs. I was going to work as a lift operator, and he ended up working up in one of the restaurants up there. At the time, I was still a skier, and I remember how annoying that had been for Steve. You know, as a snowboarder, I think he hated the fact that I was a skier. I was on the ski team and stuff, and I was really into it. But you know, I figured I'd transition over to snowboarding. I guess he talked me into it, and Matt was a snowboarder too, so I figured like I'd do what everyone else was doing. But being a snowboarder ended up being a fantastic time. I went from knowing nothing about snowboarding at the beginning of the season to by the end of the season, I felt very competent. I mean, I was able to like do little tricks and jump off of small cliffs and just whatever. I felt very comfortable on a board, and I realized like how much nicer it was to be on a snowboard in powder than it was to be on skis. The snowboard just floated right to the top, and it was a really fantastic experience. Also, working as a lift operator was amazing. I think I got something like 7 or 8 runs a day. I worked at one of the back lifts. I was at the Outback Express lift, and so I got to get free runs throughout my shift every day. And then my weekend, which was Tuesday, Wednesday, I'd go to usually I'd go to Vail, and you know, I got like a free 5 mountain pass. So that was a really fun time. Going to these different resorts and learning how to snowboard and hanging out with Matt and meeting some other new friends out there. And I didn't end up adopting the party scene though. There was a lot of people that were super into partying, and maybe the fact that everyone was into partying made me not want to party. I feel like I always have the desire to do the opposite of whatever, you know, the culture is telling you to do, or at least I was at that time. Or maybe I was just sick of, you know, maybe I felt like I had sold out enough times at this point. I just wanted to do what I wanted to do. Whatever the reason, I did not feel like partying that much at that time. So I was a pretty straight edge guy. I got another job. I was like working at a movie theater, and I actually ended up saving money that season working at Keystone, which is kind of unheard of. But as the ski season came to a close, I was still kind of lost and confused and not really sure what I was supposed to do with my life. I hadn't even really considered getting back into climbing or anything like that. You know, I realized I still had this heart of adventure, and learning how to snowboard had been a fun new skill to do for a season, but it certainly wasn't going to be a way of life for me. So at the end of the season, Matt and I packed up our things, and not knowing what else to do and not really having any connections or reasons to stay in Colorado any longer, we both headed back to Duluth and tried to figure out what next to do in life. So, and on the next video, I'll talk about my heading back to Duluth with my tail between my legs, I guess, and trying to figure out what next to do in life. So, thanks for joining me, guys. I'll see you next time.